Welcome back, John Hay. So we are going to pick up where we left off at chapter 14, part 2. Dune was still studying the paper. It says right. We should look to the right of the door. And quite easily they found it. It wasn't a pan at all, but a small square of steel embedded in the wall. A steel panel, said Lena. She ran her fingers across it and felt a dent at one side. When she pressed there, the panel sprang open easily and silently, as if it were glad to have been finally found. Inside, a silver key was hanging on a hook. Lena reached for it and then drew her hand back. "Shall I do it?" she said. "Or shall you?" "You do it," said Dune. So she took the key from its hook and put it in the keyhole. She turned it and felt a click. She grasped the door handle and pushed, but nothing happened. She pushed harder. "It won't budge," she said. "Maybe it opens outward," said Dune. Lena pulled. The door still didn't move. "It has to open," she said. "We unlocked it." She pulled and pushed and hauled on the handle, and the door moved, but not inward or outward, but sideways. "Oh, this is how it goes," cried Lena. She pulled the handle to the left, and with a deep, rasping sound, the door slid away into a slot in the wall. Behind it was a space of utter darkness. They stared. Lena had expected to see something when the door opened. She had thought there would be light behind it, or a path, or a road. "Shall we go in?" said Lena. Dune nodded. Lena stepped across the threshold. The air had a dank, stuffy smell. She turned to the right and put her right hand against the wall. It was smooth and flat. The floor, too, was smooth. "There might be a light switch," she said. She patted the wall just inside the door from the floor to as high as she could reach, but found nothing. Dune turned left and felt on the other side, with the same results. "Nothing," he said. Very slowly, keeping a hand to the wall and tapping the floor cautiously with their feet before every step, Dune and Lena made their way in opposite directions. Each of them soon came to a corner and turned again. Now they were going deeper into the dark. They both had the same thoughts. Is this the way out of Ember? A long, dark tunnel? Must we go mile after mile in absolute darkness? But suddenly, Lena gave a yelp of surprise. "Something's here on the floor," she said. Her foot had banged against a hard object. She knelt down and touched it cautiously with her hands. It was a metal cube, about a foot square. "It's a box, I think. 2 boxes," she added as she explored further. Dune took a step toward her in the darkness, and his knees banged onto the hard edge. "There's something else here, too," he said. "Not a box." He ran his hand along it. "It's big and has curved edges." "The boxes are small enough to lift," said Lena. "Let's take them out where it's lighter and see what they are. Come and help." Dune made his way to Lena and picked up one of the boxes. They walked back through the door and set the boxes down a few feet from the river's edge. They were made of dark green metal and had gray metal handles on top and a kind of latch on the side. The latches opened easily. Lena and Dune raised the hinged lids and looked inside. What they saw puzzled and disappointed them. Lena's box was full of smooth, bright white rods, each about 10 inches long. At the end of each one was a little bit of string poked out. In Dune's box was dozens of small packets wrapped in a slippery material. He opened one and found a lot of short wooden sticks, each with a blue blob on the end. Boxes had a label on the inside of the lid. The label on Lena's box said candles. The label on Dune's said matches. And under it was a white, inch-wide strip of something kind of rough, pebbly material. "What does candles mean?" Lena said, puzzled. She took out one of the white rods. It felt slick, almost greasy. "What does matches mean?" said Dune. "Matches what?" He took one of the small sticks from its packet. The blue stuff on the end was not wood. Could it be something to write with, like a pencil? Maybe it writes blue. "But what's the point of a whole box of tiny pencils?" said Lena. "I don't understand." Dune frowned at the little blue-tipped stick. "I don't see what else it could be," he said finally. "I'll try writing something with it." "On what?" Dune looked around. The floor was too damp from the spray of the river to write on. "I could try it on the instructions," he said. Lena handed them to him. Carefully, he rubbed the blue end of the stick along the edge of the paper. It didn't leave a mark. He rubbed it along his arm. No mark there either. "Try this white stuff," Lena said, pointing to the white strip inside the lid of the box. He scraped the blue tip across the rough surface. Instantly, the end of the stick burst into flame. Dune cried out and flung the stick away. It landed on the floor a few feet away, where it burned brightly for a moment and then sputtered out. They stared at each other, their mouths open in astonishment. There was a strange, sharp smell in the air that smarted in their noses. It makes fire, said Dune, and light. Let me try one, said Lena. She took a stick from the box and ran it across the rough strip. It blazed up fiercely, but she managed to hold on to it for a moment. Then she felt the heat on her fingers and let go, and the flaming stick dropped over the ledge into the river. Fire sticks, said Dune. Are they what saves Ember? I don't see how they could be, said Lena. They're so small, they go out too fast. She shivered. This was not turning out the way she had thought it would. She held up one of the white things. Anyways, what are these for? Dune shook his head in bewilderment. Maybe a candle is a kind of a handle, he said. Maybe you tie the stick on with the string and then you can hold it longer while it burns. It would still go out just as fast, Lena said. Yes, said Dune, but it's all I can think of. Let's try. With a great deal of effort, they looped the string of a rod around one of the sticks. Lena held the rod while Dune scraped the blue tip into flame. They watched the stick flare brightly, making shadows jump up behind them. The wood turned black, and the charred fire stick crumbled and dropped to the ground. But the light didn't go out. The string itself had caught fire. As they watched, it sputtered and smoked and then burned steadily, filling the whole little room with a warm glow. It's the movable light, said Dune in awe. All Lena's excitement flooded back. And now, she said, now we can go back into the room and see what's there. They went back into the passage to the doorway and stepped inside. Lena held the movable light at arm's length before her. In its flickering glow, they saw something made of silvery metal. They walked slowly around, examining it. It was long and low, filling up the center of the room. One end of it came to a point. The other end was flat. Across the open middle stretched 2 metal strips. 4 stout ropes were attached to the outside, one at each end and one on each side, and on the floor of the thing were 2 poles, each flattened at one end. Look, said Lena, there's a word on its side. They squatted it at the pointed end and held the flame near the word. It said in a square black letters, boat. Boat, repeated Dune. What does that mean? I don't know, said Lena. And here's another word on these poles. Paddles. The only paddle I know is the one Mrs. Polster uses on kids who misbehave in school. Once again, she took her copy of the instructions from her pocket and consulted it, holding it in the light of the flame. Look, she said, right here, oat must be boat. And the next part says, stocked with necessary equipment, said Dune. That must be what's in the boxes. Then there's this. Lena ran her finger along the next line. This word must be ropes, she said. Then lower, and then, would this word be downstairs? Maybe it says head downstairs. That doesn't make sense, said Dune. There aren't any stairs except the ones that go up. He frowned at the word, and then he heard a short, sharp breath. Downstream, he said. That word must be downstream. It must say something like use the ropes to lower the boat and head downstream. He looked up at Lena and spoke in a voice full of wonder. The boat goes on the water. Something to ride in. They stared at each other in the flickering light, realizing what this meant. There was no tunnel leading out of Ember. The way out was the river. To leave Ember, they must go on the river. All right, 4th graders, so that was the end of chapter 14. Please stay tuned for chapter 15 next.